Bernardino. I specialize in student loans, although I do help out in other areas of law. Tonight we're here to talk about how to manage student loan debt. It's a problem that faces everybody from every socioeconomic background in America, really. It's a problem that has gotten worse over the years and is very controversial in modern times. Tonight's presentation is geared towards educating you and equipping you with the tools you need to address a potential crisis with student loans. So how much does it really cost to go to Harvard University? Anyone have any ideas?
About 80,000 a year.
That's probably literally true, but well, it's nothing. You can simply walk into a classroom and listen to what the Harvard professors have to say. One of my favorite movies and one of my favorite scenes. Well, you're familiar with the scene, but Will Hunting explains to a pretentious Harvard student that he dropped $150,000 adjusted for inflation 1997 on an education he could have got for $1.50 in late charges at the public library. And it really shows that, especially in today's day and age with the rise of knowledge and artificial intelligence, you've really got to think about what you're doing when you set out to start your career. What are the ramifications of going to an elite, prestigious university? And how much it will affect your financial future. Student loans began in America in 1944 when President Roosevelt signed the GI Bill covering tuition for returning WW2 veterans. In 1958, Perkins loans were introduced, providing need-based government loans with reasonable interest rates. In 1993, the Federal Direct Loan Program was created, and that allowed the Department of Education to issue loans directly. On July 1st, 2010, the FEL program ended, and that brought about the modern studentaid.gov, where you can simply log on with bank statements and register and receive and benefit and aid. And this brings me to identifying the issue. $1.75 trillion in debt. Just to put things in perspective, America has given Israel $1.58 billion in aid since its inception, but this crisis is $1.75 trillion, and Americans are expected to pay it back. So it's a serious financial crisis, potentially worse than the mortgage crisis that is facing our nation. And another estimate is 1.58 trillion. It varies probably depending on interest and the government, and these people who create these surveys aren't always perfect, but this is a rough estimate: 1.858 trillion to 1.72 trillion, 45 million, and there's about 300 million or more American, roughly around there. So, maybe 1/5 of the population is affected by this. $38,000 in debt, or $38,792 with a $393 monthly payment. That is a substantial effect on families, and within the community here, it has quite an effect on quite a few borrowers. So to get yourself into the mess, you simply log on studentaid.gov. I actually didn't register for college. I made that mistake many years ago. But I just created this as a sample and a guideline to show people that it is quite easy to log on studentaid.gov and simply submit your financial information. The deadline is usually around June 30th, 2020. I should have updated this, but it's 2025. You can simply log on and register for a FAFSA. It's very easy to use. It's very accessible. And loans are still being given out to this day. That brings me to my next point. And education in America and where you are in the modern world. With a skilled trade like an electrician or a plumber, you're only going to take on $12,000 in student loan debt, which is not crippling, especially if your income or expected income is around $64,600. Similar with a plumber or an air condition repairman, These jobs require repair person rather, excuse me. These jobs require very little schooling, maybe a 1 to 2 year program, and they produce a skilled trade that will give you an income and a living. So these are viable options when filling out your FAFSA. Consider a trade. Self-reflection is something you would do on your own time, but you know yourself and what kind of, hopefully, profession you're looking to pursue. Next, when you take a look at prestigious jobs, the average lawyer makes about $135,000. They accrue about $160,000 in loan debt, and it takes about 7 years to get through school. Similarly, a PhD in humanities, if they're lucky, they're making $65,000 a year, and they have at least $110,000 in debt. So, again, you have to be passionate about what you're doing and not just pursue things for the prestige, because the cost is quite high, which brings me to my next example. An MBA, business school. There's competing schools of thought that you simply just need to have natural or untrained business savvy. You learn through experience, you learn on the job, and there's many successful billionaire businessmen who never went to school, and then there's some who did, and it really just depends on the individual. But to get an MBA, you're looking at $150,000 in debt and a decent salary, but that really depends on the individual. So when you take out these loans, you really have to think about what you're doing. And then again, medical professions. I know my family has quite a few medical professionals, and they complain about the debt. But if you look at a dental hygienist, a radiologic technologist, an ultrasound technician, again, these are 2-year trade programs that will accrue very little debt, but still get you a lucrative career possibility that would allow you to retire and build Social Security and do all the same things that a highly educated person from a prestigious school would be able to do. Whereas if you go into a prestigious medical job, you're looking at an average salary that is significantly higher, yes, but you're looking at $250,000 a year and 12 years in school. Now, you've really got to be committed. It isn't something that you should do simply for status. The commitment and the amount of debt can be crippling. And, I have seen well-to-do clients who are affected by the student loan debt regardless. The dentist would be the most expensive, $290,000, and you're making $160,000 a year, which is good, but it would take years to pay that off. Next, we'll get into the different kinds of student loans. Private loans. Now, these are very dangerous for many reasons. Clients are regularly sued by private lenders, and there's very few defenses. With federal loans, there's a fixed interest rate. Basically, these are given by private loans, and they function just like a car note. There's no grace period. If you take out a private loan to go to school, your lender could theoretically ask for payments the next day, whereas with a federal loan, payment is not due till after graduation, usually 6 to 9 months, depending on the kind of loan you take out. A credit check is usually not necessary, especially if you're a first-time college attendee. There is usually not a credit check. The interest rate on a federal loan is fixed between, I believe, 5 to 7%, and it's not going to usually change without some kind of big act, or an act of government or Congress, some kind of policy change, but generally it's fixed at 5 to 7%. Loan forgiveness is possible through teachers' forgiveness and PSLF, which I will get into later. As I said about private loans, the interest rate changes. It can change at any time. And they often require a cosigner, variable interest rates. Negative outcomes do occur. A private lender is far more likely to sue you historically than the federal government, although that could change, and I'll get into that later. Identifying your student loan. You can always download the text file on studentaid.gov or visit studentloans.gov or studentaid.gov and simply create a login. If you want to find it on your credit report, go to creditkarma.com or any of the big credit sites, and it will tell you all the loans you've ever taken out, including your student loans, especially private ones, but also federal ones. But again, for federal loans, studentaid.gov, studentloans.gov, it probably takes you to the same place, and it will take you to the FAFSA page, or if you already have taken out a loan, it will take you to your own account, and you'll be able to immediately check your balance on studentaid.gov. The difference between a subsidized and an unsubsidized loan, basically, subsidized loans have lower interest rates, unsubsidized loans have higher interest rates. Subsidized loans are more freely given out, especially to first-time college goers. Interest doesn't accrue until you leave school. That's the primary meaning of subsidizing. And the government does pay that interest while you're in school. An unsubsidized loan, it's more for graduate students. There's higher loan limits, and the government doesn't really help with the interests. These are more for grad students, medical students. And that brings me to my next loan, Federal Parent Plus loan. These are for the parents that help pay for their children's college. The parent is the one who is on the hook, who is the one who would make the payment. They are the ones who would have their credit checked, their fee, they would pay all the fees. The student does not pay anything, and unfortunately, there is no public service loan forgiveness for a Parent Plus loan at this time, and there is no teacher's forgiveness because it only applies to the borrower, who is the parent in this case. So it's a noble sacrifice made by parents so their children can get college education. And then there's the Federal Perkins program, which was disbanded in 2017 or 2018. I had Perkins loans because I graduated school in 2012, so these are mostly gone. You may see them if you already attended school, especially prior to 2017. You do see many of these, but the program was disbanded in 2018 or 2017, and the last loans were given out on June 30th, 2018. So funds were limited. It was not efficient. It wasn't getting every student the funds they needed to attend school, so the program was disbanded. So next, we'll talk about choosing a repayment plan, and much of this is still in limbo because of pending litigation. But just to give you a general idea, the standard repayment plan, fixed payments, these are just 10 to 30 years if it's consolidated, a minimum payment. So for an example, if you have $35,000, which is below average, it would take a $292 a month payment without interest to pay it off in 10 years. So it would probably be significantly higher, 5% interest on a $35,000 loan. I'm not going to try to do math up here, but you can get the idea. Graduated repayment plan. It's a repayment plan up to 10 years. It's for people who expect their income to increase over time. So each year you're going to be making more and more payments over the course of 30 years. Maybe if you're in a profession with an upward progression, maybe like doctor, where they don't make much in residency, but then over time they make more, so they continue to make a plan to pay it off over time. The extended repayment plan, and this is for people who are in a federal debt greater than $30,000, and if you make 20 to 25 years of on-time payments, it will be forgiven. Not many people have done this yet. I imagine that in the coming years, 20 years in 2028, a lot of people will have been making payments consistently for 20 years. So forgiveness will be a serious issue. But as of now, I'll get into PSLF later. It's the most proven way. Unfortunately, many of these programs have been canceled. The SAVE plan still exists. ICR and Payee are both gone, but they basically allowed borrowers to make a discretionary percentage of their income, and it would be forgiven after 20 to 25 years. All income-driven repayment still exists, and the SAVE plan still exists. They are just being modified based on our current administration. The SAVE plan was created for borrowers who took out loans to go to college, but they are in the 150 to 225% of the poverty line, and it wouldn't be practical for them to make monthly payments. So they eliminated both the subsidized and unsubsidized payments. You can still enroll in the SAFE plan, but you're not guaranteed forgiveness. It's a limbo, so to speak, but you will not be required to make payments. The Trump administration announced recently that borrowers can still enroll, but default payments, or rather they will begin collecting default on all borrowers on May 5th, 2025. So just be aware of that. You have a few more days where you can enroll in the SAFE plan safely. Contact me if you want that option. I'll be available for questions after. In June of 2022, Harvard created a project, and this is something our office has encountered. Many of these schools were coerced into enrolling into these for-profit universities. Programs would then be canceled. In California, we had the Corinthian colleges, and it's affected quite a few borrowers that they never finished their degree. They took out these federal loans, and then the federal government told them to stop going to school. So that creates a legal dilemma, and they are often reimbursed. So if you did go to a for-profit school and you never graduated, there is a potential for a closed school discharge. Again, I would contact our office after this presentation for more information on that.
Question about that. Can you go back to this slide? So the defendants, all legal remedies for the defendants were exhausted. That means the universities are the defendants, right?
Correct.
So there's no more defenses.
Correct. Yes, if a borrower was enrolled in school and never finished their degree at the time of they never finished the degree at the time the school shut down.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I was just confused by the last paragraph. It says all legal remedies. Is that good? Okay. So the last paragraph says, as of March 2023, debt relief was issued. All legal remedies for the defendants were exhausted in April of 23. Defendants means the universities, right?
I believe so, yes.
So that means, so does this mean that there's no more arguments that they can make to get out of this debt relief?
If the borrower has finished school, they are generally not eligible for a closed school discharge. However, as far as the schools themselves, the case was litigated on the merits, and all appeals were exhausted by April of 2023. The issue has been fully adjudicated, as we would say, and there is no issue preclusion or claim preclusion on these schools. They have no recourse. They are required to simply
So if the student hasn't finished at these schools and they've closed, then they should get the debt relief.
correct. The debt should be immediately discharged.
Thank you.
Okay. And this is an interesting topic for borrowers, consolidation. You only get one bite at the apple, so to speak. So with federal loans, I always tell borrowers, wait till you know you don't want to go back to school ever again to consolidate, because you only get to consolidate one federal loan or your federal loans one time. And that combines all your loans and gives you an average of all the interest rates. I'll give you an example soon, but basically if you had one federal loan with a 5% and one with a 6%, you'll get a 5.5% interest rate on your federal loans. It's very simple and straightforward. With private student loans, you theoretically could refinance as many times as you want. You would need a co-signer or some new collateral for the bank to go ahead and do that, though. And as I promised, here's an example. You got 3 federal loans. They're just going to average them all and take the average interest rate, and there you go. It's a very straightforward process, and again, I recommend it when you know you're done with school. So this is an issue that will affect borrowers in the coming days. If you miss a payment, you will go into delinquency. Don't panic. You need to contact your lender and discuss your situation. There is still IBR plans, auto pay, and ICR, income contingent repayment, and the payee plan, which were for low-income borrowers, have been canceled. There still is the SAFE plan. There still is IBR, and there still is a precedent of law for precedent of the legal standard for debtor's prison, which states that you simply can't take more than 10% of a person's disposable income to pay off a debt. That's something that's been established in America for quite a while now. So if you do default on your student loans, you could face it. Your loans are due immediately, plus fees and collection costs. Your state and your federal tax refunds may be withheld. You could get your wages garnished. You could have a damaged credit score, which was announced. You could have professional license issues getting hired, and you will never, it is difficult once you've defaulted on a federal loan to convince the federal government to give you more money to go to school. That is one issue where they often refuse to give a second loan. Don't ignore your servicer. On May 5th, 2025, this will become an issue. Do not ignore your servicer. Document everything. Write down any information, or better yet, in today's day and age, you can simply take a screenshot of the bill or document they sent to get the funds. Just confirm that you had a real conversation. There are a lot of scammers, and we do, it is something to be aware of in the modern world and the modern internet, that there are a lot of scammers, and one of the most common is student loans. So just verify that you're dealing with a real student loan collector. They'll usually work for one of the companies, Nelnet, Mohila, ED Financial, and they'll usually be easy to identify. So confirm you're dealing with them, and these companies do have excellent documentation systems. So you should be able to get your documents online, but just to be safe, keep a record of your own. And now on to my favorite slide, public service loan forgiveness. This is one of the most common ways that people forgive their student loans. You work for a qualifying employer, government, city, nonprofit, or anything else that qualifies under 501c3, and any of your federal direct loans, after 120 on-time payments, which is a daunting task, your loans will be completely forgiven. If your loans are not that onerous, they're only less than maybe $25,000, and you're interested in teaching, there is a much faster path to forgiveness. Teach 5 years in a low-income area, and you will get $17,500 off your loan. So if you went to school for $30,000 for your undergrad, half of it, and you pay off half and they match it, your loans are forgiven in 5 years. Bankruptcy and student loans, which I'm sure will be an issue in the coming days. In June of 2023, the HEROES Act of 2003, President Biden attempted to allow for forgiveness under the HEROES Act of 2003, but the Supreme Court ruled against him, and it left the standard traditional routes to student loan bankruptcy, which is possible but rare. So the first and most common test is the Brenner test, no minimal standard of living. So what that means is the student loan payment is so much that you can't afford basic necessities like rent or food. This difficulty is persistent. It's affecting you every single month. My student loan payment would be so high that I couldn't afford food, or my family was suffering, and I've made every good faith effort to pay it back. Then Brenner would apply, and student loans could be discharged through bankruptcy. It is very rare and very difficult, but it is not impossible. The next, and this is a test that's only used in a few jurisdictions, and it's very similar to Brenner. They just look at the applicants or the debtors present and reasonably foreseeable future financial resources, their living expenses, and other relevant circumstances. It's more of a catch-all than Brunner, but it's very similar. It's basically, is your student loan stopping you from enjoying basic necessities or having basic necessities? And that brings me to my conclusion, or the conclusion of this presentation. This is a very tumultuous time. I didn't want to discuss politics, but the Trump administration announced that after May 5th, 2025, they will begin defaulting they will begin defaulting borrowers on student loans. They will begin collection efforts. They'll begin seizing tax returns, wages. So be aware of that. Stay prepared. We have represented many borrowers, and we are staying informed about new developments. We can inform you. We can, in some cases, provide full representation. And if you want to reach out, my name is Tom Maximus. I'm a staff attorney at Legal Aid of San Bernardino. My email is tomm@legalaidofsb. Our phone number is 909-889-7328. We're usually open Monday through Thursday, I believe 8 to 5. I am more than happy to meet and consult with anybody regarding their student loans, and I guess I'll open it up to questions.